It's wedding season. Here is a cautionary tale of one client ruining her mother's finances for her wedding. One day, a client named Candace sat down in my office. She would like to apply for a home equity line of credit, or HELOC. I arrange a meeting with her fiance Brad and Candace to get an idea of how much they want, what they will be using the funds for, and to lay out expectations. The couple explained their wedding is 2 months away and the bills are piling up. $3,500 for flowers, $3,750 for a photographer, $800 for chair covers. They figure all total, their wedding will cost around $42,000. It takes a few days for the couple to get me the necessary documents. I put on the application, and you'll never guess what I find. 3 almost maxed out credit cards between them, totaling $14,000 they didn't tell me about. With their required payments on top of the mortgage, there was no chance the HELOC was happening. Explaining this to them in person was not fun. Candace was almost in tears, and Brad was demoralized. It now became a real possibility for them. The wedding may not happen. But the story doesn't end there. 10 days later, I get a call from Candace's mother. She wants to withdraw her entire retirement savings plan to help pay for the wedding. That's it. Her mother's retirement savings plan is empty, gone. I never spoke with Candace's mother again, but being in her 60s with no retirement savings is a bad spot to be in. The lesson? Don't ever finance something that will give you zero economic return, especially when you don't have the financing already in place. So that right there is a piece written by one of my friends, Colton, a financial advisor at a major institution in Vancouver, British Columbia. Colton has been in the financial services industry for over 10 years, and he is passionate about helping young people get their finances on track so they can live a life of abundance, retire early, spend more time with family, and travel the world. Colton speaks in a very practical tone of voice in his writing on X. He has a community called the Wealth Forum where he discusses financial concepts directly with his audience. He's also written an ebook about how to get your debt under control. So I've enjoyed talking to Colton, getting to know him. We've done some spaces in the past on X. Without further ado, we'll just get right into it. So here's Colton on 3 Deeper Cuts podcast.
My parents, they did take an interest in their finances. So I think maybe that bled a little bit into my curiosity and my passion. But I just saw that, the best planning and the worst planning. And I thought to myself, okay, well, there's an opportunity here to legitimately help people, right? There's people that struggle with it, and it's not formally taught really anywhere in society, right? There's small government programs, but they're not. There's no real scale, and there's no real measurement of their effectiveness or anything like that. So, and the more I dug into it, I like talking about the economy. I'm probably not all that fun at a cocktail party, but I'll talk about inflation. I'll talk about GDP, and all of that precipitates down into, well, how do you position your investments? So I think I really got into it because it was an opportunity for me to help people while pursuing something that I'm really passionate about.
Nice. You're a financial advisor in Vancouver, BC. and your career began in 2008, and you wanted to help everyday people organize their finances. So I took a look at your ebook. How do you help your clients assess their debt ratio, and what resistance do you face from them when you bring up this topic?
Yeah, so it starts with cash flow analysis, right? So you need to be able to understand where your money is going and where's it coming from. Um, so it starts with a simple budget, right? And for me, I use just an app on my phone. Every time I make a purchase, it goes in there. So it's that. It's also understanding where your debt is, right? So where's your higher interest debt coming from, and being able to track that. Where you get resistance is taking action, right? So part of what I do as a financial planner, as the name suggests, is I create financial plans for clients. So I will be honest, there's a bit of legwork required from the client to go over their statements, their credit card statements, their banking statements, to understand how much their mortgage payments are, things like that. That's where it can be a bit of a challenge trying to collect those documents. And it's up to me to kind of give the clients a gentle nudge every once in a while to say, hey, we sat down together, we talked about creating a cash flow analysis with you. We need to understand where your money is going so you don't get consumed by this debt, right? Here's why it's important. And, how can I help you collect these documents? How can I help you make it a little bit easier for you? So, that's kind of
Okay.
the big challenge.
So what is your take on living to enjoy life versus living to save? So, for example, do you think that some people take it too far, where they save too much and they kind of live this restricted life, or the majority of situations you encounter in your demographic is that they're doing the opposite game?
I think more people enjoy themselves maybe a little bit too much, rather than I'll call it starving themselves of some enjoyment. I liken it to financial cheat meals. You can indulge and spend on whatever it is, entertainment, concert tickets, whatever it is, and still be very financially sound. The challenge is kind of like, as you alluded to, is if you go too far on one end. And being in this industry now for 10 years, I have seen it where clients they live off their credit card, right? And that's just not a sustainable way to to function your lifestyle, because you just can't overcome 22% interest on a credit card. So if I were to say, is it one or the other, I would say more people I guess kind of overextend themselves a little bit too much. And that's
Okay.
really what my role is to kind of bring awareness to that and show them a path to correct that.
It's got to help that you're a pretty easy guy to talk to. Like, you got a friendly voice. Like, you're like, you're not you don't seem like the type of guy who's going to be like knife handing them and getting in their face. This is probably not what they pay you for. But I know that, so I love Vancouver. I go there every chance I get, whenever there's an opportunity, personally or professionally. And I know that it's not exactly a cheap city to live in. So could you give me an example? Like maybe that couple that you were talking about, an example of people that were kind of secretly overextended, and you only found out like once you did your own due diligence.
Yeah. So the post I did a post a week or so ago, maybe. This is an example of some clients that I had, and I unfortunately have a lot of stories like this, but the gist of it was they came to me wanting to refinance their property, which is like very, very common. We love our debt up here in Canada, particularly in Vancouver and Toronto. The sad reality is people kind of use their homes as piggy banks a little bit too much, which
Okay.
which reflects this story. So the short version of it was the couple wanted to refinance the place to pay for the wedding. I think the wedding was about $42,000, something like that, which is, again, kind of common in our area. And, this is also harkening back to, they didn't quite understand of all their debt that they had, right? They had never done a debt assessment before. So when I put on the application, I found they had, I think it was something like 14,000, 20,000, something like that in credit card debt. Well, that makes it very, very difficult to refinance a property when you're paying, when you have to service that type of debt. So the end of the story was the wife's mom came out and basically emptied her retirement savings plan to pay for this wedding. And, the sad part to me about that is the mom won't actually see the effects of it for years to come, right? So she did what she feels was a good thing in helping her daughter and son-in-law, celebrate their special day, their one special day that they get, but it's going to affect her for a long time. So that's an example. It is very expensive. Like gas prices, we float around sometimes the highest in North America.
Wow.
It's we're always top three. Housing prices obviously is ridiculous. We just we're not creating enough supply. That's basically the end of it. And nothing's really been done about it. I mean, politicians have been campaigning on it for years, and all of a sudden, I think it was actually last 2 years, obviously Trudeau campaigns on, we'll fix this housing crisis. And last year he comes out and says, well, because all the provinces are obviously looking for support from the government to fix these problems, particularly obviously BC and Ontario. And all of a sudden Trudeau comes out and says, housing is not really our problem. And
wow.
Surprise, surprise, the politician, change their point of view, but it's just like, we need some support somewhere because we're just not building the houses fast enough. So that's what really drives, that's a big cost in Vancouver.
Got it. It's not so much changing one's point of view. I think we all as humans, as long as we get out of this crowd mentality, we can all empathize and understand someone to change their point of view. But on an issue where, people cannot find a place to live, and you're basically renting yourself into oblivion, you never have any equity, even if it's not a house, but like a condo. That's a problem because you're losing talent. It's a problem down here, like even in Dallas. Home prices in Dallas are almost as much as Southern California at this point. Because the supply is just so low. So as a financial advisor, how do you recommend people use credit cards? And why did Warren Buffett tell people to cut up their credit cards and throw them away? Do you recommend like a happy medium somewhere?
So Buffett recommends people cut up their credit cards and throw them away, quite honestly, because of what we kind of touched on earlier is more people overspend than underspend. That's the reality of it. And in some ways, it's not consumers' fault 100% because credit card companies do gamify it. You get points for spending. You get, there's tiered bonuses on introductory offers. You can see the points that you're collecting on each transaction. So there is, kind of a dopamine effect of getting that quote unquote reward. For me, I think it comes down to discipline and education. And if you can do that and you understand the costs of your card, I think you can get a lot out of them. The other thing I would say too is understand what you want to get out of your credit card, right? So there's dozens of different types of rewards out there. Understand what you spend your money on. because different point systems will give you different tiered rewards, right? So if you're mostly groceries, then find a card that pays you 5 times on your groceries, and then you can use those points to pay down your credit card. If you are diligent in your spending and understanding what your credit card actually offers you, then you can come out ahead. But I just think that, you know, that Buffett quote comes from, and I've seen it, that comes from, you know, too many people overextending themselves. I think the stat I read a couple months ago is Canadians on average have about $20,000 worth of consumer debt.
Okay.
That they're carrying. So
Not including student debt?
I don't think that was including student debt. I know it was not including mortgage, obviously, and
Okay.
stuff like that. I don't think it was including student debt.
Okay. So back to your example of the couple with credit card debt, how does one avoid getting into a relationship with too much debt?
Yeah, I think you just track your expenses, right? It doesn't have to be complicated, and if you truly can't trust yourself, then you might have to go the Warren Buffett route and use your debit card, or use your credit card for small purchases. You know, $10 lunch, $15 lunch, whatever it is, because building a credit history is very important. It's becoming more and more difficult to, you know, do certain activities without a credit history, right? So, for example, a car loan, trying to book a hotel. I haven't done it in a long time, but I don't know how easy it is to book a hotel without a credit card. I know certain, at least in Vancouver, to pay for parking, you need a credit card. So they definitely serve a purpose, but I would just say to make sure that you don't get piled up, know your limit. And the other thing too that, you know, I just kind of thought of the other week when I was having a conversation with another financial planner, financial advisor, if you're not sure if you can handle it, have other people hold you accountable, right? So find family members, find friends that you trust, obviously, and just say, you know, hey, have like a quote unquote credit friend group, right? So
Okay.
how are things going? How are things going with you? You know, like what are you spending your money on? Where are you getting good deals? You know, what benefits are you getting from your card? How are you using it? Stuff like that to hold each other accountable. I think it can go a long way.
Okay. I like that. I hadn't thought of that group network before. You talked about discipline. You posted a good meme some time back with Mike Tyson. The quote was something about like discipline is doing what you don't want to do. And I like that mentality because you know, we often separate financial discipline from physical exercise or physical discipline or other types of discipline, but it's financial discipline is probably among the most important, probably right next to health, because you can spare yourself a lot of anguish by considering it like the same muscle and not getting yourself into some hot water. So how much debt is too much, like for the average worker in your area in Vancouver, like in terms of ratio?
Yeah, so financial lenders look at two different ratios. They look at what's called TDSR, so total debt servicing ratio, and that's basically all of your obligations, right? So all of your credit, your lines of credit, car loans, credit cards, rent, or if you have a home, mortgage, heating, stuff like that. So that they look for about 42% of your gross annual income. Or so let's say your monthly income is, I don't know, just say 5,000. So they're looking for 44% of that, so roughly 2,200 allocated to those types of debt. That's the mark where financial lenders are comfortable lending at. The other is GDSR, which is gross debt servicing ratio. That just basically takes out your shelter costs. So it just looks at your regular credit cards, lines of credit,
Okay.
student loans, stuff like that. That ratio they're looking for, I think about like 35% of your gross income. So if you're listening to this at home, that's a good place to start. If you're around those ratios, that's average, and lenders are probably comfortable lending to you in that area.
Okay. So I remember we did a space on X some time back where people were talking about early career financial mistakes. And I remember you told a story about being in university when you learned some valuable personal finance lessons. So what would you say to your 25-year-old self in terms of financial planning?
Yeah, we could do a whole nother show on the mistakes that I've made in the past. Um,
That's awesome.
which is why I
Same
think
here.
I'm,
Same here, by the way.
which is why I think I'm in a better spot today to kind of share those, because I've lived through a lot of these experiences. What I would say in my personal, let's call it advice, was I was trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? So you get into university, it's a new crowd of people, new friends coming from all over Canada, coming from international places. It's exciting. I played a lacrosse up there, so I was on the sports team. So you build networks that way. Mine was, just trying to look wealthier than I was. Right. So I was the guy trying to, well, I did. I was the guy buying rounds of shots for everybody. I was the guy that, wanted to go to all the sports games, the Vancouver Whitecaps, the Canucks, all of that. I got sucked into that, and, I paid for it. I'll never forget one of the kind of defining moments and thing that really kind of switched my attitude was, I think it was maybe winter break of my sophomore year. A friend was down in the States for school. He came home and was like, okay, you want to go out on Friday? And I was like, I look at my bank account and there's literally $20 in there. That's all I had to my name was $20. And I'm like, and I'll never forget that feeling, because in that moment, I felt so powerless. I felt like I had nothing else. I spent that $20, that would be it. So that was a big change for me, that light bulb moment. So anybody listening, that would be my suggestion. Don't overextend yourself. Don't try and look wealthier than you are. Honestly, most people don't care. If they're your friends because you're buying them shots, and those aren't good friends, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
just you do you.
Hey, what's going on, friends? Thank you for listening to the 3 Deeper Cuts podcast, your lifestyle magazine for the practicing surgical pathologist and the physician in the trenches of community practice. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe at 3deepercuts.substack.com. Drop your email in the list at 3deepercuts.net. Download some free career guides at chuckgmd.gumroad.com. And check out my personal blog at chuckgmd.substack.com. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. We'll get back into it. So student loans.
Yes. The quick answer is yes. It's very ironic you brought that up, because 2 days ago on Wednesday, we were having just a small meeting within our branch, and they were talking about like business opportunities, stuff like that. And one of them was the new policies we have for medical professionals. So in Canada, it's very common practice for this to be offered to someone who's training to be some type of physician, some type of doctor. Our bank's policy is, if they are training to be a doctor, they get $300,000 worth of a line of credit. They don't need a cosigner. They don't need any income, and it's automatically approved.
Wow.
So yeah, Yeah, so the banks, and the idea behind that is obviously the banks want to make money off of it, but the idea behind it is they want to get this doctor attached to their institution early,
Okay.
because once they've graduated, they want to keep that doctor's business. They want the doctors, eventually should start being able to make some good money and pay that off, and then they want to fully franchise that doctor.
Got you.
I can tell you, so my wife, she's a nurse. She did nursing school. Her debt, I think was like $30,000
Okay.
for schooling. She thankfully paid that off because, I mean, she inherited some good financial habits from me, and she had some savings that she had done, but
Nice.
yeah, so it's very common for doctors to be handed money like that.
Nice. So I want to bring something up that kind of fuses the concepts that we've been talking about. And this just came up this week. So I picked up this book by Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way. And hear me out. I kind of use some of the techniques in there to analyze my spending habits. And so we're all emotional creatures, and our financial conundrums that we get ourselves into are usually driven by misplaced emotions that are wrapped around money. Like, we spend to get a dopamine hit. We do dumb stuff with money. We also do intelligent stuff with money that's driven, by this desire to never make that mistake again. So I've found just within me, and this started maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that writing a lot, like privately, like journaling, first thing in the morning, writing about stuff that I plan on buying before I actually pull the trigger and spend it, has prevented me from doing a lot of the same dumb stuff that I did at like age 25. So if I have the idea that okay, so like 3 years ago, I was thinking about getting this expensive air purifier, but I was still in fellowship, and I was like, do I really need this? So I just wrote about it. And then I just wrote about why I was even thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? To really kind of tease that out. What am I feeling? What is this? And nobody ever sees this. This is all private. I just keep it in I don't even look at it until a year later, or not a year later, but a month later. So what are your thoughts on that? Have you ever talked about something like that with a client, about the emotional side of overspending?
I like that practice, actually. But no, it is so kind of part of what we do, and it's becoming actually a bigger, I'll call it, focus in financial institutions, is behavioral finance, right? So we at our bank, we have a behavioral finance quote unquote specialist, and the decision making process is the same part of the brain as the emotional part, right?
Okay.
So our decisions are driven through emotions, and people might say, well, there's some logic to it too. It's more about how you feel about the quote unquote logic. So it is very important, and it's becoming a bigger factor. And I think that's probably an opportunity for people like myself to get a little bit more specialized and practiced with it. But it is absolutely important. And so let's go back and think about the story, right? What were they going to spend the money on? They're going to spend it on a wedding, right? How, other than a funeral,
Yeah.
what other event is more emotional, right? It's you're getting ready to marry the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and everybody knows it. The photographers know it, the flower people know it, the caterers know it, and you want this perfect day, and it's hitting every emotional button you have. So it's there's an example right there.
Yep, absolutely. And to that, I guess I would add that a lot of this kind of falls on the young gentleman of finding the right person. I mean, that's on you, like as a young man. I mean, a lot of my listeners are young men, so it's kind of it's on you to number one, be authentic and not try to pretend to be, more financially well off than you actually are. And number two, like, make sure that you're attracting a woman who's generally okay with a simple wedding, because you're actually sabotaging your children. I mean, the more of that debt you take on, the less money that's going to compound, to put them through college, or if, God forbid, some medical issue comes up. I remember, like, when I got engaged, I was living in San Diego with my fiance then, who I'm now married to, and we were 100% okay just renting a brewery, inviting, a handful of close friends, and then just, the important family members, and then just doing it that way, under $10,000, and then just doing a repeat ceremony after I finished training. Like, that's where we were at. I mean, as fortune would have it, I had some relatives that wanted to help out, and so we did it at a different location. But I think that is not talked a lot. It's not talked a lot about. You know what I mean? For young people, really thinking critically about the type of person you're attracting into your life, because we have this thing in the West. It's like this entitlement. It's just like, you should have, $100,000 like wedding ring. Dude, I know, like, I would have like these young, sailors and Marines come in, and they just like took out a personal loan to pick up like a $50,000 engagement ring, some girl they've been dating for 6 months in downtown. It's just bananas what people will do on emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, a couple of notes on that. So yeah, I mean, my wife's engagement ring is $5,000. It got appraised at $8,000, so I guess I did okay there.
Nice.
Yeah. But I have friends in the same situation, right? So I had a friend that, again, we were all kind of intertwined, loose friends, but he bought a ring from someone he knew and, quote unquote, was supposed to be friends with. And I think it was like $23,000, and it came back appraised at less. So obviously
Wow.
that's a challenge. Yeah. It's not good.
Whoops.
Yeah, not good. But so in terms of how do you make sure that you're on the right path with the person that you're planning to marry? A lot of my content is now based on that, because, I've been married now for almost 3 years and even been with the same woman for almost 8 years. So,
Okay.
it's have those conversations relatively early in the relationship. And I'm not talking like, on date 6, how much income do you make? It's like, what are your plans for the next 3 years? And you can get subtle cues from just their behavior, right? If they're always, if they're always trying to go to those concerts and,
Yep.
they want to eat out 3 times a week, then obviously, there's a little bit of subtle cues there. So yeah, don't be afraid to introduce those conversations and just get an idea of kind of what their goals are, and make sure that your goals are aligned. And then obviously, as the relation progresses, just once you get to a certain point, you should get what I call financially naked with your partner, and be completely transparent. But that'll take time. And
Right.
yeah.
No, I totally agree. Those subtle cues, you can pick up on things if you're paying attention. I mean, in the dating game, not trying to sound like a dating coach, but I've made plenty of mistakes in my younger years. But if you just shut up and listen and just like ask questions and just enjoy the ride, but like stay quiet. Like, she will tell you a lot about her life. So stop talking about yourself and listen to her, and you're going to get the information you need over time, patiently. So we've talked about debt. We've talked about spending habits, but, you and I are both kind of in the building phase also. Like, we work day jobs, but we're also trying to build like something more. You've written an ebook, you've started a community. You're looking to build something in addition to what, your salary is providing for you. So in your ebook, you also mention that I think strategies for increasing the cash flow component, and you allude to, like a young person selling or reselling products on Etsy or eBay. Do you have like success stories of clients that actually have started to turn their finances around by doing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the side hustles are becoming a kind of a big thing. Obviously, it's because the cost of living is kind of growing faster than our wages are, right? So
Yeah.
the are going and actually that's one of the things I love about X is you can see a lot of people, starting to generate some good side income for
Right.
whatever it is, right? Fitness coaches or people, doing drop shipping, things like that. Yeah, I have clients that do a lot of consulting, so that's very common. So, for example, a lot of professionals like, I don't know, engineers or manufacturers, people like that, they do consulting on the side,
Okay.
and that's another stream of income for them. Um, I know people that do like tutoring, right? So if they have a specialized degree in, say, something like, I don't know, statistics, something like that, they'll tutor kids on the side, and I mean, kids will pay, or their parents, whoever it is, are paying, $50 for an hour, which is, it's not terrible money. You do that for 2 hours, and you do that, 3 or 4 times a week. That's some extra pocket money for you. So I think just because of how fast the rise of living, or the cost of living is increasing, it is becoming more popular. And with the digital age, it's becoming easier to do, right? If you think about, everything that's with all the infrastructure that's already in place, like, you don't have to set up a payment system. Stripe's already done that.
Right.
PayPal's already done that, right? You don't have to set up an email system. Gmail's already done that.
Yeah.
If you want to hire a freelancer, well, go on Fiverr,
Yep.
and they'll be able to do that for you, right? So there's a lot of infrastructure already in place that you can take advantage of. And basically what, I'm suggesting people do is, if they're serious about it, take some of those pieces and tweak them to what your passion is and what you're good at, right? And then you can actually build some good side income for sure.
That's awesome. Okay, so I had another question down here. So a couple of the people, so one of our past guests is a tech worker who has relocated from the U.S. to Mexico City. I'll link that below. I think it was episode 35 or so, bow-tied passport. So I was just curious, is there anywhere other than Canada that you would potentially live for geographical arbitrage, or if not you, maybe one of your clients or friends? Because I know there's a good amount of expat Canadians and Americans and Europeans in Latin America.
Oh gosh, tons of places. I know my wife and I kind of jokingly but not jokingly talk about doing something like that, moving somewhere else. Obviously, you probably have to wait a little bit now that we have a two-week-old baby
Yeah.
at home. But yeah, we like, for like 100%. So she has cousins that moved down to Mexico,
Cool.
coming on 3 years ago now, and
Nice.
they're loving life there, and they don't have plans to come home. And it's sunny, 330 days a year down there. If when my wife and I traveled through Europe, there's certain places that that really popped out to me. I loved Athens. We were there for a few days.
Okay.
The cost is a lot lower than it is in Vancouver from basically every perspective. I would live there in a heartbeat.
Wow.
I have a client that their retirement plan, the couple's retirement plan, is to move to Spain in 4 or 5 years when they retire. And their idea is, because they're like, you know what, we're gonna live, I don't know, 45 minutes, maybe an hour outside of a big city like a Barcelona or a Madrid or something like that. And this guy's telling me, he's like, you can get like a borderline mansion with a pool and beautiful yard for the equivalent of like $500,000 Canadian.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're talking about it, and like, the conversation of food comes up because like I was like telling him about how much I love the food in Athens and Rome. Rome's a little bit more expensive, but if you're again, if you're 45 minutes or an hour outside of the big cities, I think it's definitely worth it. So
Okay.
and then it goes back to, if you're building these digital businesses, you can work anywhere.
Right.
You can be traveling, and you can live in a nice country in a low cost area, and even something like we've been looking at, again, jokingly but not jokingly, we could almost live, if we sold our place, we could almost live mortgage free in like Phoenix or Scottsdale.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like a lower cost area like that from a housing perspective. And it's
That's awesome.
sunny down there, and it's mostly rainy and cloudy up here.
Yeah, I guess I've only seen Vancouver on the good days because I just go to meetings and stuff in the spring. But yeah, I guess. Look, I'm with you, man. I love the sunshine. That's why I moved down to Texas. But Arizona's awesome. I almost moved there, down to Tucson. So, yeah, I love the Southwest. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
There's something about the desert that just really works for me.
Yeah.
I often vacation out there. So, all right. So let me keep this going. So, you are. I think when I wrote this, it says you are about to become a father, but that has happened. The baby has arrived. Yeah. So you obviously have been thinking about this for a while, and by way of your profession, you probably have been talking about, budgeting and time management with your spouse, your wife, who's also a nurse. So can you explain a little bit how you deliberately prepared for this major life event?
Yeah, so it started off pretty early once we found out that we were having a baby, and it was it started off really with any extra like bonuses or any extra overtime that my wife would work. We would just pocket that away and start a college fund for our son. So he's we're just waiting on his social insurance number, which is equivalent to Social Security, and then once he's got that, we're going to be opening up his college fund, and he's got a good running start. Right? So it started with that. It also, what I kind of did is, because I had no idea, so I started asking my friends who had kids, like, how much do you think you spend on a month for your kid? I mean, unfortunately, but not surprisingly, most of them said, I don't know, probably because they don't track their spending. But and then I start doing a little bit of research on my own to get an idea of kind of what costs were ahead. And again, like, no matter how much you prepare, I don't think you can ever fully incorporate everything. The other thing too, obviously, this was a big one. Obviously, one of us had to take time off to be with our son. So we talked about it, and it wasn't a foregone conclusion that my wife would take time off. We did seriously talk about myself being the one to stay home for a while, but what it came down to is her benefits were just better than mine from
Okay.
my perspective. So the hospital, so she gets some employment insurance, which is like nothing. And I think we just got our first one. It was like $650.
Nice.
But the hospital that she works at, they top up to 88% of her non overtime income.
Nice.
Which my employer just wouldn't take there. So and so it just made a lot more sense from that financial perspective for her to stay home and for me to just kind of continue building on my book of clients and stuff like that. But
Okay.
yeah, so those are some of the things that we talked about early on, and I think it
Nice.
positioned us fairly well.
So another thing I wanted to mention about, so when you do have these life events, anything can happen. You always hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. One thing I remember picking up, I read Ramit Sethi's book, I think when I was 28 or 29, something like that. And one of the mistakes that I had been making before that is not automating my transfers. I was doing it manually so that I would just like fall behind. So I started auto transferring into two things. One is my emergency fund, so basically saving just for the sake of saving, peace of mind, for a house or whatever. That's an emergency fund that I just don't really touch, and I actually had to use it a couple times. And then the other one was automating into contribution to my Roth IRA and maxing out my 401k. So I know that it varies. Like so what are the best online savings accounts that you know of right now, like based upon the people that you work with, and do they fluctuate year to year?
Yeah, it's so usually the digital banks are quite a bit more attractive in terms of their interest rate. So I work at a big bank where you can, if you want to find out where I am, you can do some research. We're the second biggest bank in Canada.
Okay.
So like, and we have a massive footprint, right? We have 90,000 employees across everywhere.
Okay.
So the digital banks, because they don't have the same cost structure as the big boys, they typically offer a lot better rates.
Okay.
In terms of like term deposits, savings accounts, things like that. And yeah, so it's
Okay.
If you're gonna look, I would start there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, right now I'm using the Capital One 360 for kind of like my holding bay, you know what I mean? Like automating my monthly savings into like a 1 year safety fund in case anything happens if I lose my job, and we're good with living expenses. Well, how many months of living expenses do you recommend to your clients in Vancouver?
Yeah, so the general rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months, and I'm actually going to steal a post I saw from somebody I follow, JJ's Finance Club.
Oh yeah, JJ.
JJ,
Yeah.
So I saw a post I saw of him actually this morning. I'm going to steal some wisdom from there. He there's tens of thousands of emergency fund threads on X, and he actually went a little bit deeper into the details some I hadn't seen before. So he said you can set aside your emergency fund based on the rest of your financial picture. So for example, if you have low debt, you have a pretty strong income, you got some good investments, you can probably err on, say, 3 months, right?
Okay.
If you are if your job's unstable, if you have health concerns, if you're on, say, 1 income as opposed to 2, if you have, and then factor like if you have 0 kids versus if you have 4 kids. If you have 4 kids, you probably want to err more on the 6 month side, right? So, if you take into account your entire personal and financial picture, I think that'll guide you a little bit more.
Okay.
The general consensus, and this is probably one of the only rules of thumb in finance that I actually subscribe to. There's a lot out there that aren't relevant today, but this is the one I think that's time tested, and that's how I would approach it.
Awesome. Yeah, I follow JJ. He's actually coming on in a few weeks. I like that you guys tend to talk a little bit more about like personal stories, like, I mean, I know you like obviously keep the names private and everything, but kind of those tactical personal stories of like real life examples are more enjoyable to read. Speaking of reading, one of the other things I like to do on this podcast every other episode or so is to do a book talk. And a few months ago, I saw you post something and referencing Tim Grover's Relentless. And so like there's Colton, the day job guy, but then there's also Colton, like the side hustle guy who's trying to build some generational wealth for his son and future children. So how's that book? That's an intense book. I love it. How has that book helped you, like both your day job and what you're trying to build?
Yeah, Tim Grover, he's an intense guy. What I found though is the tone of the book seemed to be a lot different than what I've seen his interviews on YouTube. Like he seems a little bit, I don't know, I guess laid back on
That's true. Yeah.
his interviews. But
Yeah.
anyways, so the big kind of overarching thing that I really took away. So I guess just a quick note for any listeners out there that might be unfamiliar with it. Tim Grover, he was a trainer for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, some of the other
Yep.
NBAs. But the thing that I really took away is that to perform and kind of stay at the peak performance is you really got to break down the small stuff, right? So the old quote, don't sweat the small stuff. Tim Grover and his approach is the exact opposite. And I think that again, it starts when you look at an example like, what are you spending your money on? You can even break it down a little bit further. Okay, you go to the grocery store. Everybody needs groceries, but there's name brand, there's non-name brand. There's buying in bulk. There's not buying in bulk. There's the I call it the compulsive rack, when you go up to the the cashier and there's gum and magazines.
Yeah.
So right there,
Yeah.
are you falling into that trap? Stuff like that. So that was a big meme that I took away from the book.
That's true. Yeah. He talks about routines a lot. Michael Jordan's routine, Kobe's routines, attention to detail.
Yeah, and I think so. Something else too that I really took away, and after I read the book, I really kind of wished I had approached this to my own sports career. But those guys approached the game the exact same way every single day. It didn't matter if it was a preseason game or Game 5 of the NBA Finals. They had, like you said, they had the same routine. They had the same mental approach. And it's something that I wish that I kind of incorporated in it, but it's something that you can incorporate in your professional life too, right?
Yep.
Come to the office or come to wherever you go to work, approach it the same way every single day.
There's so many good mental models in that book, or not even like, I guess they're kind of mental models, but like this, like the visualization. I mean, your kid's 2 weeks old, he's going to evolve and change, and like you're going to tighten up your game even more, like you already kind of have your shit together, right? Like, I mean, you're providing for your family, you're a homeowner, like, like you kind of practice what you preach. But yeah, that book, especially the audio book, man, it's like pretty hardcore. Like they hired some speaker and he's just like, yeah, I agree with you. Like Tim Grover, if you watch the interviews, he's like just kind of a chill guy. Like he's, he's fit, he's like an older Indian guy,
Yeah.
But yeah, the book is written hardcore, and they hired like this like really intense Italian guy to narrate it. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to have met you out here, and kind of we're in different industries, but there's some overlap, and your message is really helpful to the young physician and nurse and healthcare worker. So, should I put my entire worth into Bitcoin?
The quick answer is I would not. So I get this question obviously pretty often now because it's Bitcoin and cryptos in the headlines every day.
Yeah.
I had my aunt ask me about it, and it's just like, okay, here we go. What I say to clients is, especially like if they're, I'll call it newer to finance and investing, stuff like that, whatever you put in there, just be prepared to lose. Full disclosure, I'm in Ethereum. I'm actually not in Bitcoin. So I'm not, it's a few $100s. I think I have like $600 in there.
Yeah.
So it's not my whole net worth. And it's what I call schmuck insurance. So if this thing really takes off, I get a tiny piece of it.
Right.
Fine. But, it's just new, right? The industry itself, it's still really new. Like it came to market in 2009. It didn't really start hitting headlines until 2016. And that's when it really started taking off. So what you can as an investor, if you want to look at it this way, and this is kind of how I look at it, is you can use it as a market sentiment indicator. So if Bitcoin goes up, you can bet people are feeling a lot more positive about the market, and then vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So I do think without a doubt there will be wide scale application with it one time, but I think people are kind of overestimating how fast people's behavior change, right? So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Credit cards were introduced in the 1920s. It wasn't until probably wasn't until like 2017 that credit card transactions surpassed cash transactions. So it takes a while for consumer behavior to change. And think about like all the people that don't really have access to that infrastructure yet.
Right.
So it put some in there. It's fun. I mean I'm in it a little bit. I wouldn't do the whole amount.
No, I agree. I just I think that I read somewhere. I think it was one of these these old financial guys who said something like, in a bull market, everyone thinks they're a genius, and I mean the crypto is no different. It goes in these cycles, and you really have to be prepared to lose it. So you kind of have to be smart about it. And if you think kind of foundationally of what crypto is aiming to do, it's essentially replacing the financial infrastructure that has been in place, and that it's basically turning society on its head. So it's not that I don't think it's going to be widely applicable, but I agree with you. It's going to be more of like it's going to take longer, and it's going to be kind of a parallel economy. It's not going to be like an all or nothing thing, in my opinion. It could be wrong. I mean, stranger things have happened, but
I agree with that.
So tying this all together, I think 2 or 3 more little questions here. So what is your main reason for existing on X?
The main reason I exist on X is to spread financial literacy, and that's it, right? So it's me. I'm trying to scale myself. I'm trying to scale what I do professionally on X. So I'll give like for an example. So for someone in my role, if you have 300 clients, like you're really, really busy. Like that's kind of how far you can go. Whereas X, I mean, you could have hundreds of thousands of people reading your material, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot more scalable, and that's really why I'm on X, is to increase people's financial literacy. I approach it from, I'm going to be candid with you. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, kind of thing.
Sure.
And I've been in the industry now for 10 years. I've done, helped people open their first bank account, and I've helped people set up a business trust for a $9 million business. So it's
Cool.
been everywhere. And excuse me, the real kind of push for this is because like nobody else is doing it. Banks have been around for 200 years. They have little to no incentive to teach you financial literacy, and to be quite honest with you, they make more money off of you if you're not financially literate.
That's true.
And I'm sitting here in my office in a bank telling you that. The government, again, like they have other places they want to spend their money, right? They're trying to buy votes, and the education system, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I've talked to enough teachers to see that it's, at least in Canada and BC in particular, it's a broken system that they have little to zero incentive to plug that into their primary schools. So I'm out here because it's a huge task, but it doesn't mean that just because it's a big task, it shouldn't be attempted.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I'm rooting you on. Now, what website would you direct the listeners to, and can they book a consulting call with you?
Yeah, so I have my own, www.thewealthgen.ca. best thing to do if you're interested in kind of hearing what I have to say and doing some type of coaching, you can email me. My email's on there, info@thewealthgen.ca, or DM me on X. I'm pretty quick responding there. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm here to help people because it's a convoluted area, and you don't quite know what to believe. So please feel free to reach out. I'd love to help however I can.
That's awesome. Doing great work, my friend. And thank you for coming on Three Deeper Cuts podcast. And I will see you out there. Yeah, man. We'll talk again. I'm just
I had an absolute blast, and this was a great conversation. And yeah, thank you for having me. And love to do it again whenever you can.
Sweet. That's it. Great conversation with Colton. You can find Colton at Gen_wealth on X, formerly Twitter. You can join the Wealth Forum, thewealthgen.ca/wealth forum. Check him out also on Gumroad and download his ebook and subscribe for his updates. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Three Deeper Cuts, the lifestyle magazine for the practicing surgical pathologist and the community physician in the trenches of medicine. Bringing you high signal content fueled by 10% buffer neutral formalin. If you like this content, subscribe to the newsletter at 3deepercuts.substack.com and chuckgmd.substack.com. Find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Have an excellent rest of your day, professors. Until next time, be well and stay curious. Bye-bye.